Hi, this is Rajesh Mukherjee from Hulda Institute of Technology. Today we are going to understand function in C programming language. So basically what is a function? A function is a block of code that performs a specific task, which also improves the modularity and reusability of a code. Basically, it takes an input and work upon that input and return an output. So if we go for a practical example, then if I write a very simple code, very simple code where we are just including a header file stdio.h and then writing void main printf hi, we are learning function in C programming language. Now see, in this following code, this is a block of code which basically perform a particular task. What it is? It is simply printing this particular statement. Now this particular block of code will be considered as a function with name of the function is main function. So if we execute this, basically we know it's going to print the very this statement. See, it's printing that. We already know that. So because of that, we already say that a function is nothing but a block of code which perform a specific task, which take an input and return an output. Now, why we use function? There are various reasons, but most important reasons are for the code reusability, that if we can write a program into functions, then we can use that code again and again and we can increase the code reusability. We can break a large program into small sub programs and execute them together, and it becomes more manageable in this way, so that if any large program, if we break it into sub program, then it's very easier to manage. And also that when we break a large program into small sub blocks, it increases the readability. Apart from that, one of the important reasons of function is that it increases the flexibility of testing. That for example, that instead of writing an entire program at once, if we subdivide it into small sub block, then if the program is giving error to performing a particular task, if you only can concentrate on that particular sub blocks which is responsible for performing that task, that is sufficient. We no need to check the entire block. Now what is the syntax of the function? We all know that that when we write something in C programming language, we need to follow the syntax. Now the function also do have a very specific syntax. It comes with a return type. It comes with an identified unique identifiable names, which is nothing but a valid C identifier. Also, it comes with something called parameters, and then function body and return value. These are the component of a function. So if we go back to our this example, what we have just studied, that you see that here this in this function, void is the return type of the function main, which is simply asking that what it will return. Name of the function is main, and the parameter or argument here is nothing, which it does not require any argument to operate to perform its specified task. Basically, as it is printing a statement, it does not require any other input from the outside. And the return type is void because it basically returning nothing. Because of that, there is no return statement. So as I told, the return type specify the type of the value the function will return. It may be an integer value, it may be float value, it may be void. Void in the case when the function we're not going to return anything. The function name I already have discussed, it's nothing but a unique name. When you are writing a code and breaking the code into sub blocks or making multiple functions, then it's very much important to provide unique names to each of the function so that you can uniquely identify each of the function. Then comes the argument. The argument part is that if to perform the operation for which the function is written, it do require any inputs, then you need to pass it as argument. And if you do not require that any kind of inputs to perform the operation by that function, then it is optional. Then comes the function body. The function body is the actual code that going to be executed when that function will be called. And there is a return statement. If function return back something, if the return type is not void, then it will return that which value that going to be returned. So we will take an example here. See, again it's a main function, but instead of last time, here it is returning something. The the return value of this function is an integer value, int, and name of the function is main. And again, to operate, there is nothing in the argument or parameter that basically showing that to perform the operation, this main function does not require any input. Now then, what it's basically performing, it's performing the square root of 25. Now it's printing the result and it's returning 0, as we have specified that the main going to return an integer value, so we are returning 0. Now the function in C program can be of two kinds. Now if we take an example, see that I'm using this code so that I don't have to write everything here. Suppose I'm declaring a variable a, sorry, suppose I'm declaring a variable a to hold an integer value. Let's the integer value is 24, right? Now what I'm doing, again I'm declaring an integer variable square root sq, and I want to calculate the square root of a. So for that, what I'm doing is sq a, sq square root of a. Now printf the square root of percentage d is percentage d. Sorry. Now the square root of a will be stored in sq and ending the semicolon. Now see, okay, as include math.h. Again mistake, printf, pardon me. See, now the output is showing the square root of 24 is 4. Now this is a block of code which is basically a function, but it's do have a, as per our understanding what we have just discussed, it's performing a specific task. What it's doing, it's calculating square root of 24 and it's printing that. Now my question is there any code I have written here which actually specifying that how the square root of 24 will be calculated? No, because we haven't defined that. Why? Because the function are of two kinds, as I told, that one is library function and other is user defined function. The library functions are one which are already defined, which are predefined in nature. Now here we are calculating the square root of 24 using a predefined function which is called square root. Why we are calling it predefined? Because the definition of square root already inside the math.h. Simply we are including that header file and using this. So these functions are called predefined function. For example, the printf. We have used printf here. Have we ever have we here written the code for the printf? How it's going to be print? No, because the required code already inside the stdio.h, and we are simply using that. So functions in C are of two kinds. One is library function, another one is user defined function. What is the library function? These are the predefined function in C standard libraries like stdio.h, math.h, just we have seen. And this header file contain ample of functions. If we require to use them, we simply include those header file inside which that particular function is defined, and we simply use it. For example, printf, scanf in stdio.h, square root, power, pow in math.h. Now, this is an example of user-defined function. Now, what is the user-defined function? Well, let's see that here, what we happen here, that we have declared a main function. This is a block of code and this is a block of code. In this block of code, which is a main function, we have declared two integer variables and initialize them with value 10 and 20, and we are simply calling something called add. And what is add? Add is an function, function which is defined by the user, which basically performing addition of two values. Now here if you see, if we go back to the function syntax, we have called that function. In syntax of function there is a field that is called parameter or argument. Now see, if you look into this particular example, to perform the addition of two values, we require that two values. So to operate this, to perform operation by this function, we do require two values, and that is what kind of those values are? Those values are integer values. Basically we are passing x and y from the main while calling the add. So we are declaring the argument and we are performing the addition and returning back. Now see, now it will be much more clear if you consider this particular function. Here add is the name of the function, int is the return type, as the function going to be return an integer value. These are the arguments or parameter. To perform its operation, it do require two value and both require to be integer values. And this is the this is the return statement, which basically returning the summation or addition of both to the values. Now Now we will understand two concept what we already discussed, already know but yet not discussed, is the modularity and reusability of the code. For example, see, we do have, we don't require the method age. For example, that we are creating a user defined function which does not return anything, void, and the name of the function is greet, and it does not require any argument. Basically what it do, it print a greetings. Hello everybody, how are you all? Now this is a function, user defined function. This is a block of code we have defined which basically print that statement. And in our main function, we know that in C we must have main function, as because of execution always start from the main function. So we define a main function whose return type is nothing, where we simply use greet. Now if we execute it, see, it's printing. Now when the term we use reusability means, again if I have to greet, then I don't need to require to write this code which is responsible for printing this statement. I simply call greet again and it will print this two times. Okay, if I use an escape sequence new line, then it will be much more clear. See, if I require to again use that code, I don't need to write the code which is I have written inside this function. I simply again call this function and it will print 3 times C. So this is called reusability. Now, the next thing we discussed here, that when we go for the function, when we break a large program into small sub blocks, it is very much manageable. So take an example. For example, okay, before that, we will consider another thing that is called function prototype. That suppose I declare the main function first and I declare the greet function or user defined function later, and then if I execute it, it will give an error. Why it will give an error? Because we all know that in C, execution always start with the main function. So when execution will be start after the main, it will try to call main greet, but still now it don't know anything what is greet because we have defined greet after that. So to avoid this particular problem, we need to declare a function prototype, means a smallest description of the function if user defined function which we are going to execute. So for that, what we are going to do, that see, this is a user defined function, and what could be the smallest description of this function? There is a function greet which return nothing and which don't require any argument. So if I write this void, which means return nothing, name of the function is greet, and it parameter is require nothing. So this is a smallest description. If I provide, this is called function prototype. If I do that, then see, it's printing again. So this is called function prototype. Now the last point today we are going to discuss is that how the code becomes so much manageable when we break a large program instead of a small program. So to save time, I already have written the code. See, let me clear the output screen. Now see, if I write this particular program, this is a function, this is a program where which basically performing two arithmetic operations, subtraction and addition of two values. And basically we have declared four variables, two for the storing the input taken from the users and two for the storing the result. Now see, if we execute it, it will first ask the value of a. Suppose the value of a is 10 and value of b is 5. Now see, it's performing correctly. Now see, this is a code where we have written all the code at once. But instead of that, if we go and if we write, if we break this particular code into sub blocks, it will be looks like that. Let's see, we have declared two user defined function, one is sub, another for sum, which both require two integer values on which it will operate, and both will return nothing. So both the function prototype is void. Then we declared the main function. Inside the main function, we have taken the input just like earlier from the user and stored them into a and b, and then calling sum and sub for performing addition and subtraction, right? And when I'm calling the sum, the code for the summation or addition we have written inside a user defined function sum, and for the subtraction we have written here. Now see, now very code we are running, again we are giving the value 10 for the a and 5 for the v. Now let's see the same thing. Now here the changes is that instead of writing the program all at once, we have break it into sub blocks. So here we have a main blocks, we have a sum blocks, we have a sub blocks. This is the concept of the function. Now why I call manageable? For example, see, there is a mistake in coding of subtraction. Mistakenly I have written multiplication instead of subtraction. Now if I go for that, definitely it will give an error, you will given a wrong result. See, the 10 minus 5 is 50. This is a wrong result. Now to rectify it, do I have to look inside this and up to this code? No. I know that for subtraction we have a dedicated sub block, that is sub, and there if I look into that, we can easily track the mistake and we can rectify it and we can make it correct. See, so that is why we are asking that it's provide us modularity, and it's becomes much more manageable when we use function. Now we will conclude this lecture here. Very next day we will define, in our next lecture we will try to understand different kinds of function based on its parameters and return types. Thank you all.